Today's video was one I've been kind of excited to do for a long time now, and I put it off because I just wanted to make sure that I had my track plan pretty well nailed down, and I think I got it. I think I got it close anyway. This is something I've been working on for months and months and months now, and it's changed quite a bit over those months. I've tried basically everything I could to come up with a plan that worked great for me. I've tried a couple of double deck layouts that those didn't really work very well. I tried a number of other things, and eventually this is the plan I landed on, and I've stuck with. I've made minor modifications to it over the last couple of I would say weeks or months at this point, but we've pretty much got it all nailed down. So what I'd like to do is to walk you through the plan and give you an idea of what I'm thinking about. And along the way, I'll show you some pictures of the real world locations that serve as inspiration for this plan, and just give you an idea of what things will look like when it's done. At this point, I've already started buying track and turnouts and everything that I need for it. So, I'm pretty much locked in, although I imagine as I start to build out the bench work, some things will crop up, some issues will crop up, some better ideas that I didn't think about when it was just on paper. And we'll address those at that time. So let's start today with this section over here. This is the first major section of the layout. This is Sandpoint, Idaho. This is a real world location. And it's a great part of the country for railroad fans, for train fans, because at Sandpoint, Idaho, you have not only the Ponderay Valley Railroad, which is the railroad that I'm sort of taking my inspiration from, but you also have the Burlington Northern Santa Fe. They have most of the trackage rights there. You'll find some Montana Rail Link interchanging in Sandpoint as well as Union Pacific. They interchange there as well. And oftentimes these Union Pacific trains will have some Canadian Pacific locomotives on them as well, because up at the northern border of Idaho, the Union Pacific interchanges with the Canadian Pacific. So there's a wide variety of railroads that meet up here, and they're all my favorite railroads. So, luckily that turned out that way, and it was a kind of almost an accident. I didn't plan for it, but luckily the location, Sandpoint, Idaho, very near where I was modeling my previous layout, exists and is a very cool location to model. I think I wanted to include a yard, so I've done so here. This is a small yard, and these trackage here, this big thick line here represents the Union Pacific main line, and if we were to travel south this direction over here, the Union Pacific line will go to Spokane, Washington. Actually ducks under a road, which is a real road, and off towards Spokane, Washington. The opposite side is the Union Pacific towards Sandpoint Interchange. This is a little bit of a artistic license here. Really, it's the BNSF that kind of meets up with the Ponderay Valley Railroad, which is the real world sort of version of what I'm doing here at Sandpoint in this location. So what I'm kind of doing is any through traffic, I want to be able to run like long trains with large, Dash 9 locomotives and stuff. They're all going to travel along this main line here, and it connects in basically a big circle, so I can kind of run trains in a big circle all day while I'm kind of doing all the interchanging and everything within Sandpoint with my Metaline Falls crew. So I can run Canadian Pacific locomotives here all day long, and I will also use this main line on this end over here for the Burlington Northern Santa Fe local to kind of come and collect anything for the Burlington Northern Santa Fe from the Sandpoint Interchange Yard. They'll come down this track here and grab it and take it back to staging, as well as Union Pacific can take trains heading north or trains heading south, and can take cars from the interchange and head out that direction too. So it gives me some good opportunity to interchange with a couple of railroads there. Let's see. There's a lift gate. This is the main entrance to the room. I'm going to have a lift gate here, I believe. Possibly swing gate. We'll see what happens. But some sort of way of getting into the layout room here. It's going to have to be really carefully designed. I want it to be robust. I want it to be easy to lift out of the way and put back, and for the tracks to line up perfectly every time. It's kind of a tricky thing to get right. But yeah, this track right along here is actually going to be the lead track for the interchange yard, and it'll connect over here with the Box Canyon Bridge with the rest of the layout. But that's really, from a visual standpoint, we're going to be kind of looking at this as kind of a lead track, so I can do all of my rearranging, my sorting of trains in the interchange without having to follow up the main line. It's kind of a clever use of that, I think. Equipment storage. This will just be for random cars that I kind of want to display. Just another place to kind of store equipment. And then we have this main track here will be for Union Pacific interchange tracks, most likely, or BNSF, depending on how things work out in operating sessions. Second track will be for the other railroad. And then this is kind of the runaround track here. We have engine servicing facility here. I'll be able to store all of my engines at the end of an operating session. This track here, the Metaline Falls will need to get clearance to venture out onto the Union Pacific main line in order to change out this Pacific Steel and Recycling. It's a small business. Union Pacific doesn't want to deal with it, so Metaline Falls Railroad will take care of the business for them. It will only receive a box car or a gondola or something occasionally, every 3 or 4 operating sessions probably. So it's just another place for me to kind of push some stuff around, and kind of a little bit of an interesting industry. As we leave the interchange, the train basically has been built at this point and we're ready to move on. Head out underneath the over the highway overpass, and we follow the Union Pacific tracks along in this direction here, which is similar to how it works in the real life. It's single track basically in real life. There's a portion where the 2 tracks follow along with each other, but it does go down single track at one point, and the Ponderay Valley Railroad has to get permission to venture out onto Union Pacific lines in order to head towards Sandpoint. I don't want to do that for my railroad. I want to be able to run trains I want to have a couple of trains running at once, so we're going to keep it kind of like 2 tracks running side by side along here. The first industry you come to is Riley Creek Lumber. Wanted to include some lumber operations on my layout. It's very popular within the Ponderay Valley. There's a number of customers in Ponderay Valley that actually accept lumber or ship lumber. Riley Creek being one of them. This one, again, I see it probably getting a load every other operating session. A pretty small deal in the overall scheme of things. It exists on this big swing gate here. This is will be a door to another room. So we need to have a swing gate here for it to move out of the way. That room is going to be like basically a storage room. It's going to be rarely used. So we'll have a swing gate, but it'll be a scenic swing gate, spending most of its time nice and closed. We'll move along here. Go further north. This is where we start to get into lots of landscape modeling. That's my favorite kind of modeling, so I wanted to have some good opportunities for landscaping here. The Ponderay River Bridge here both Union Pacific and the Pend Valley Railroad in real life, they cross the Pend River. However, they cross them in different points. But this is model railroading. We have to make some adjustments, and so I kind of have them kind of coming together here, crossing at the same point. I think it'd be a really interesting sort of scenic area, and it'll allow me to just have an opportunity to run some Union Pacific traffic over a bridge, kind of cool, as well as Metaline Falls traffic over their own bridge. And both bridges will be inspired, although greatly compressed versions of the actual bridges that exist in the area. From here, things get a little wonky as far as real life to modeling. I have the Blue Slide Tunnel, which here I have before the town of Usk, Washington. It doesn't exist before the town of Usk, Washington in real life. It's after that. But I wanted to have a tunnel on my layout, and I see this as kind of a really good opportunity to kind of split the Idaho portions of the layout from the Washington portions of the layout. You kind of enter the tunnel, and then after a time, you eventually arrive in Usk, Washington. We do these kind of things in railroading to kind of, shorten the run a little bit, but do it in a way that tends to make sense. And I think this kind of makes pretty good sense. The Union Pacific line will run behind a line of trees and just disappear into some trees somewhere. And that, in actuality, goes back into staging. I've got a 3-track staging track for trains. Probably the way it'll work is one staging track will be for northbound Union Pacific trains. The other staging track will be for southbound Union Pacific trains. And the third staging track will be for Burlington Northern Santa Fe local staging for the interchange at Sandpoint. So a train will be staged here that can bring a fresh load of cars to the interchange point and then return them that way. That's enough of that for now. Lehigh Cement. If you come back here to the Usk, Washington area, this is one of the larger industries on the layout. I really love 2-bay covered hoppers. They're my favorite, so I wanted to include a cement factory. There is a real cement factory in the town of Metaline Falls. It's been shuttered for years. But in my pretend world, my proto-freelance railroad world, they shuttered the cement factory in Metaline Falls and moved it down to Usk, Washington, just to save some mileage for the railroad and just kind of make things easier. So this will be a newer cement facility here, and I'm looking forward to modeling that. The track kind of curves around here. It comes into Usk, Washington, and this is where a lot of the switching happens. There's 2 companies here. There's the Pend Newsprint Company, which is a real-world industry, and I'm going to be modeling a shrunken-down version of it, but still a pretty interesting version of the newsprint company. The farthest back track is for loading newsprint. This middle track here will be for unloading recycling paper and this kind of thing. They'll do some paper recycling at that factory as well. And the nearest track will be for chemicals, kaolin, as well as any other chemicals you may need. I think chlorine. I have to do a little more research on that, but I know they use kaolin for sure. All right, we've got a nice runaround track so that we can kind of get all trains turned around. And on the front half of the layout here is the Vagan Brothers Pole Mill. Now, Vagan Brothers is a lumber company in the valley. They have a couple of lumber mills, actually, in the general area. They don't do telephone poles, though, utility poles. They do large and small diameter lumber. But in Usk, Washington, there is a Vagan Brothers mill. And in Newport, Washington, there is a pole mill. I think it's like, I want to say, I can't remember the name of the pole mill now. Bell Pole, I believe it was called. Anyways, I thought pole mill. I wanted to have, like, this is a mountain railroad. This is a northern Washington, Pacific Northwest Railroad. There was a lot of lumber around this area at one time, and there still is. There's a lot of tree felling, lumber. I wanted that to sort of be the theme of the railroad as much as possible. Is the natural sort of materials sort of harvested from the earth and shipped via rail. So we have the lumber company, we have the newsprint company, and we also have a pole mill in this case. I wanted to have logs on train cars, and you don't really see a lot of logs on train cars anymore. My old layout, I had a pulpwood facility that you could ship pulpwood from. You don't see a lot of that anymore. Pulpwood generally now is chipped and sent out that way by train. So you have a lot of wood chip cars. And wood chip is cool, but I wanted to have logs on train cars, and really the only way for me to really justify it was if those logs were actually utility poles. And there is a utility pole company in the area that ships utility poles via train car. So, heck, you've got it on the prototype. Let's put it in my prototype, my Proto Freelance Railroad. So right here is the loading tracks for the pole mill. And this track here is going to be like a storage track, also help for for turning trains and that kind of thing. And if we come this direction here, this track right here acts as the lead track for the whole Usk, Washington area. And we've got Box Canyon Bridge as well. Box Canyon Bridge exists on the rear railroad. It's a fantastic looking bridge. It's a gorgeous area, just a really dramatic scene. I want to include it on my railroad. It's going to be just a really cool kind of scratch-built bridge. Scratch-built's not the word. Kit-bashed bridge. And a really kind of dramatic, cool scene. Unfortunately, it's only going to serve as kind of part of the lead track for both Usk, Washington here, as well as part of the lead track for Sandpoint, Idaho here. But when I'm just kind of running trains for fun, this whole railroad is connected, right? So I've got two tracks that go around in a big circle. I can run trains in two directions at one time. And I'll be able to run trains across the Box Canyon Bridge that way. So I think it's kind of a clever use of a lead track. So that's it. So we kind of come back around here again, and we're back towards the Interchange Yard. So when trains are done at Usk, Washington here, obviously train turns back around and comes back down this direction to the Interchange Yard for the end of the day. And that's it. That's my railroad. Let's see. So minimum radius for the Metaline Falls portion of the railroad is going to be 24 inches. You'll see that in this area up here where the tunnel exists, and down here between the cement factory and the newsprint factory as well as the far end over here with the lead track. For staging and for the Union Pacific main line, that's going to be a 30-inch minimum radius, just because we're going to be dealing with longer engines as well as probably longer cars as well. I'd like to have some auto racks on here at some point, eventually down the road when I get money. So I wanted to design this railroad without, I didn't want to run into a situation where I was like, man, I wish I would have made everything kind of wider. This seems to be the widest turn radius I could create and still have large enough area in the interchange tracks in order to do what I wanted to do there. We're kind of just limited by space, and so we kind of got to do what we got to do. Staging was something I went back and forth on for a long time. I looked at maybe putting the staging below the Usk, Washington area, but I couldn't figure out a good way to get it down the grade without doing something crazy like a 5 or 5% grade. I think 4.5 was the shortest I could get it, and from what I've read online, people are saying don't do it. Another thing I was looking at maybe doing was putting a helix in this closet here, and doing a helix down to a lower level. But I couldn't figure out how to do it and actually make it small enough so that I wasn't going to be running into issues with that in there. People say the larger the radius of the helix, the better. Otherwise, you run into some potential problems. I didn't want to run into potential problems, so no helix. But I think this is enough railroad. Most part, the railroad's going to be about 18 inches wide. It's going to be closer to 24, 26 in this area here, only because I've got behind the backdrop these staging tracks that run behind the backdrop here. Turnouts are number 6. Main line is all code 83, and the yards and the sidings are going to be code 70. I think that's about it. I think it's a pretty good plan. It really allows me to do a lot of really kind of prototypical, model a lot of scenes that are very prototypical for the area, but allow me to have some fun as well. It's not overly complicated. I can run it by myself. We can get maybe 2 people in here running at one time. Possibly more. Possibly I can have somebody, taking care of the interchange while the another person, collects a train and takes it up to Usk, Washington to exchange up there. I don't really know. I'm kind of a lone wolf in this hobby right now, so for the time being, this is how this is going to be. But yeah. So I think that's it for now. Thanks for watching the video. And if you'd like to see more about the progress of this railroad and even the previous one I worked on, just check out Metaline Falls, the Metaline Falls Railroad at mfrailroad.com. That's mfrailroad.com. And I'll leave a link for it at the bottom of this video. And yeah, thanks for checking this out. And I'll see you again, hopefully in about a month. All right, everyone. See you later.